Hey, my name is Amoga, co-founder and CEO of Carbon Origins. We're a robotics and VR company on a mission to make robots commonplace. So we're a group of scientists, engineers, and entrepreneurs. We have landed robots on Mars, we've launched suborbital rockets, we've deployed satellite constellations, developed VR technologies for Disney. We're very passionate about deep tech, and we see robotics as the future of front-end labor. And our goal is to incubate that in a location, in a place where it can get the most TLC. We originally started the company in California, but we moved to Minnesota a few months ago. Really affordable to build robots in the United States here in Minnesota. There are a lot of contract manufacturers here with the right expertise. There are other companies building robots here. It is going to be the hotbed for robot manufacturing. The reason is, if you can build Skippies, our robots, to work in the Minnesota weather and geography, they can work anywhere.
Now, when you hire someone with a disability, you've immediately led by example. You've said you trust a new perspective, that you're confident in that person, in yourself, and your team. Now, I work with a theater company, and we have signs on the wall that say, "Work your quirk," and radical inclusion. They emphasize that what makes us different gives us strength, a new perspective, a creative edge. In Cajun cooking, there's an ingredient called the lagniappe, and it's that little something something that keeps you coming back. Hire somebody with a disability. It's the lagniappe thing to do.
So, you've decided to start your own business. You have the resources to sell or the services your new customers need. So what's next? Here's a simple checklist to help you get started. First, choose your business structure. Do you want a sole proprietorship, partnership, limited liability company, or corporation? Each form has tax and financial consequences. Next, check to make sure the name you want to use for your business is available. You can do this by checking with the Minnesota Secretary of State office. If you want to be a sole proprietor, all you have to do is register the business name with the Secretary of State office. Or if your business is going to be an LLC or a corporation, when you file the business structure registration with the Secretary of State's office, that registration also includes the business name. After that, you may need to obtain federal and state tax identification numbers from the Internal Revenue Service and the Minnesota Department of Revenue. Note that some businesses won't need to take this step. Need is determined by the number of business owners, if the business will have employees, and if the business makes taxable sales or provides taxable services. Next, obtain any necessary licenses and permits from state and local government. Then you will need to buy or rent space for the business and set up phone and internet service. You'll also want to start a banking and credit relationship with a bank or other financial institution. And don't forget to write a business plan with benchmarks to guide you through business growth. We can help you.
And remember, if you need help in any of these steps, please reach out to us here at the Small Business Assistance Office. We have staff available to answer your questions.
My name is John Hauk. I am president of LightRun Incorporated. LightRun manufactures and sells a specialized unweighting tool for survivors of stroke, traumatic brain injury, and other injuries. I started out my career working for a company called Cardiac Pacemakers, then later on St. Jude Medical, along with a couple of startups in between. So I came out of the cardiac world, and Minnesota has been a great place for a medical device career. Our product has been sold and is currently being used in Hennepin County Medical Center, the VA Hospital in Minneapolis, North Memorial Hospital, and we're soon going to be delivering a system to Courage Kenny. So we are getting local traction in spite of the pandemic, and our goal is to go nationwide in 2022 and beyond.
Well, I met Andrew in 2010. He was a recent graduate from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. So he already had his education before he came to us. And he was looking for work as an architect.
And I applied for over 200 jobs all over the U.S. I applied for jobs in Hawaii, New York, Florida and didn't get any sort of response. And after I'd applied for all of those different jobs, I realized that the job market right now is really low and that I was facing discrimination, as were a lot of people with disabilities.
So he's deaf and the world is hearing, and so of course the biggest barrier for him was communication. He worked with MCIL on job interviewing skills, and he did a very nice job talking about his experience and his work qualifications, but he did struggle a little bit with the accommodation issue, and so we worked a little bit more on that.
It was my good fortune to meet Andrew back in 2007, 2008. Andrew was someone who was deaf and he had graduated from architectural school. Really my charge was, how can I help Andrew network, take smaller steps given what the economy was.
He really advocated in my job search. He wants people to get out there. He connected me with people in the field because that's what I needed. He reached out to MnDOT, the Minnesota Department of Transportation, in the Affirmative Action Office. He contacted Lynette Geschwind. She was the head of the Affirmative Action Office at MnDOT. And she was able to set up a contract job for me to inspect airport terminals. It was a fascinating job, but again, it was contract work. And they actually didn't seem to see me as a person with disabilities. Based on my resume, they said via email that they were just really impressed with my experience, and they wanted to give me a chance.
When we launched Andrew, we were not focused on his disability. We helped him develop the skills to market himself as an architect. No one with a disability gets a job because of their disability. It's all about skills, and Andrew's a perfect example of someone that took what we helped him learn and was able to independently get a job in the private sector.
Do you run a small business in Minnesota? Are you trying to expand your operations? Or need help adjusting to changes brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic? Then contact your local Small Business Development Center.
We'd like you to know that whether you're starting a brand new business, growing an existing one, or if your business needs help because of the COVID pandemic, the SBDC can provide that help, and it won't cost you a penny.
These are hard times, but if you need help with your business, Small Business Development Centers have real professionals standing by, ready to help you develop your business plan, do marketing and research, set up your accounting, gain access to capital, and much more. And they do it all for free. So contact us today at mnsbdc.com.
In Minnesota, we're training our workforce for the next chapter of the global economy.
Can't wait to get started on this project.
It's great hands-on practice.
I think our students will love it.
I'll bring this to the robotics lab.
Our education and business climate are among the best in the nation. And they work together to grow creative, high-skilled talent.
The possibilities are almost endless.
We're a state that works hard, boasting one of the highest participation rates in America's workforce.
Awesome, man. This looks great. We can really do anything here.
Great things are happening in Minnesota, and we can help you thrive.
Final touch, man. Checkmate.
Join us.
Hello, everybody. Steve Grove here, Commissioner of Deed. Thank you for joining us today. We're thrilled to be hosting this press conference to talk about our Main Street Economic Revitalization Program here in Minnesota. We are announcing today 14 grants for a little over $42 million going to an extraordinary number of organizations across the state. And we're here to talk a little bit about the program. We're going to talk and hear from some of the recipients of those grants today, and of course, answer any questions you might have. I am joined by my colleague, Deputy Commissioner of Economic Development, Kevin McKinnon, and a few of the team that helped us with this grant process as well. And we're excited. Why don't I back up and just kind of give us the lay of the land in terms of this grant program and how it works. We built this program last legislative session, and it took several weeks collaborating with legislators and business leaders and nonprofit leaders to try to figure out what's the best way to put a solid development program in place in our department to address the fact that in so many places across the state, we've had a really difficult couple of years for business. Of course, the pandemic made main streets across Minnesota face new challenges, business closures due to COVID, consumer confidence that dropped when the virus was at its peak. These business clusters that were once kind of the livelihoods of downtowns really grew quite desolate and quiet and took big hits. And then, of course, you had the murder of George Floyd and the civil unrest that followed that quite literally destroyed many main streets and corridors in the Twin Cities that desperately need to be built back if we want the economic engine of Minnesota to continue to thrive. And so, working in collaboration with the legislature, Deed, the governor, our whole team, put together this Main Street Economic Revitalization Program. And it's meant to have a couple different levers that partners can use to deliver funds to business leaders and business owners and other developers to rebuild their main streets. And really the key insight behind it is that, yes, we can go out and help individual businesses that were hit, but it's main streets, it's those clusters of businesses, it's those corridors where one business being next to another business helps both businesses do better that really are the lifeblood of so many economies across our state. And so a program that recognizes that, recognizing the power of corridors is what Minnesota needed most. The program is relatively simple. It makes grants to nonprofit partner organizations to fund 30% matching grants up to $750,000 and guaranteed loans up to $2 million. So we as a department issue a grant to organization. They can use either of those tools to help development happen. We leave it up to the organization to develop the program that makes sense for their community. And they can do so as long as they're helping businesses in a corridor that have been hit by hardship since March 15th of 2020. So essentially since the beginning of the pandemic. That includes a whole host of different types of hardships. And again, at the center of this program is ensuring we get money to great leaders in our state who can drive this development forward with their communities. And we're joined by a few of them today who I'll introduce in a moment. But before we hear from some of our guests, I wanted to just give a quick lay of the land of who got the dollars from different organizations. And then we'll hear some more detail from three leaders who lead organizations who did get grants today. So I'll go through the list here, and some of you can see this in the press release at mn.gov/deed. But first, I'll mention the Chinese American Chamber of Commerce in Bloomington that got $1 million. They're a nonprofit serving Asian American small businesses. They're going to use these dollars for a mall in the West Metro and the West Metro suburban areas that have great needs since the start of the pandemic. Next, I'll mention the Destination Medical Center Economic Development Agency in Rochester. They'll be getting $988,000. They got a grant in round one as well of this program, which happened last year. But in round two, they're focusing on a new set of corridors in Rochester outside of some of the central areas of the business district and in neighborhoods that overly index for people of color in Rochester. So we're very excited to see them expand their footprint with development work in Rochester. The Faribault Area Chamber of Commerce and Tourism gets $780,000. They've been around since 1913, and they advocate for businesses and alliances with the community. They're going to use this to revitalize that downtown Faribault area. Heartland Lakes Development Commission in Park Rapids will get $260,000. They're focused on economic growth in Park Rapids, Nevis, Dorset, and Lake George. This funding in particular is going to help the city of Akeley and will provide grants to additional businesses in Park Rapids that were hit hard by COVID-19. Greater Mankato Growth, of course, in Mankato will be getting $2 million. They are going to provide grants to businesses to support economic recovery in those key commercial corridors in the Greater Mankato area. The Minneapolis Foundation is our largest grantee this round. They're getting $16.75 million. They were a major grant winner in round one as well and are currently operating a large program focused on some of those corridors hit hardest in the civil unrest following George Floyd's murder. This grant will expand that funding to include a partnership with META and others as well, and it'll provide grants and loans to businesses in the areas in new corridors that weren't addressed in round one of the grant. The Northland Foundation is getting $4.28 million. They serve Aitkin, Carlton, Cook, Itasca, Koochiching, Lake, and St. Louis counties. Many of the areas they serve are also in Native nations with shared geography, like the Boys Fort Band of Chippewa, Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior Chippewa, and Grand Portage Band of Lake Superior Chippewa as well. They're going to do a lot of work both on those tribal lands and in communities surrounding their area of focus up there in Northeast. So excited for them. The Northwest Minnesota Foundation, $2.2 million is going to one of these initiative foundations. You'll hear more from a few initiative foundations in a minute. These dollars are going to go to Bemidji, East Grand Forks, and the Highway 59 corridor within the White Earth Nation boundaries to support economic recovery from the pandemic. The Southwest Initiative Foundation is getting $1.84 million. They're a rural regional community foundation. They're going to focus on Wilmer, Marshall, and Montevideo. The West Central Initiative is getting $3.5 million. They're going to be focusing on Browns Valley, Morris, and the communities along State Highway 10 from Moorhood to Bluffton. And the Winona Area Chamber of Commerce will use $1 million to revitalize their downtown as well. So you can see a pretty broad cross-section of communities. The legislation stipulated how much could go to the Metro versus Greater Minnesota. In round one, we over-indexed a little bit to the Metro. So as you'll see in round two, we're indexing a little bit more towards Greater Minnesota to make that balance work. And these are the final dollars the program has. So this concludes the first go of this program. We'll talk in a minute about what the future of the program is, but today we're celebrating these grantees. And with that, I'm happy to turn it over to a few of those grantees directly. We are thrilled to be joined today by Tawana Black, Matt Verlick, and Tim Penny. Each grantees who I have not mentioned yet, I'll let them tell their story about how they're planning to use this money to revitalize their communities. So first, I'll turn over to Tawana Black, the CEO of the Center for Economic Inclusion in St. Paul. The organization is getting $1 million. Tawana, thanks for joining us. I'll turn it over to you to tell us more about the work.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Commissioner. Good afternoon. I am Tawana Black, the founder and CEO of the Center for Economic Inclusion. We are honored to have DEED in the state of Minnesota as a new investor in our efforts to build regionally and racially inclusive economies and our efforts to be able to invest directly in businesses owned by our communities. Together with our partners at NAO Partners, Mustard Seed, Hennepin Ramsey counties, and others, we are investing directly in Black, Latina, and Indigenous business owners in growth sectors to build an ecosystem where Black and Brown business owners are principal job creators and wealth builders in Minnesota. We're doing so by investing social, intellectual, political, and financial capital directly in expanding the number of businesses owned by our communities with annual revenues who are growing from $1 to $10 million, and those who are equipped and positioned to do business with both our corporations and government agencies. We will deploy these and other funds through equity investments, forgivable loans, and revenue-based financing, and this capital will be complementary to the Center's innovative consulting services with corporations and government agencies, and our efforts toward driving shared accountability for the systems change that is necessary to create racially equitable and inclusive regional supply chains and economies. Thank you, Commissioner Grove, Governor Walz, and the entire DEED team for your investment in this Main Streets program, and your confidence in the Black and Brown businesses who are fueling inclusive growth throughout our state, and your investment in an organization led by and fueled by Black talent throughout our organization. We're grateful. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tawana. We're the ones who are grateful. You've built an extraordinary organization at CI, and we cannot wait to see what you'll do with this funding. It's going to go to very, very good use. Let's go next to Matt Verlick. He is the president of the Initiative Foundations in Little Falls. They're receiving a $4.5 million award for their foundation. Matt, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks so much for the invitation. And I want to echo the appreciation that Tawana expressed to everyone who's been involved in this program, including the bipartisan support in the legislature, as well as everyone in the Walz-Flanagan administration, and Commissioner, to you and your team at DEED, because we know that over the course of the pandemic and everything else that has unfolded over the last 2 years, you all have had a lot on your plates, and appreciate the partnership that you've shown with a wide variety of organizations, including those of us here today and all across the state in greater Minnesota, as well as in the metro. So I'm president of the Initiative Foundation based in Little Falls. We're one of 6 Minnesota Initiative Foundations, and my colleague Tim Penny will speak in just a moment. He leads another one in the southeast part of the state. So we serve 14 counties in east central Minnesota, along with 2 sovereign native nations. And we're very excited about the opportunity to put to work the resources made available through this program. We, in our proposal, identified 6 communities where we have very eager and enthusiastic partners. That's Brainerd, Long Prairie, St. Cloud, Cold Spring, Pine River, and then our hometown of Little Falls, where the foundation is based. As the commissioner mentioned, those downtown corridors, our main streets, as the program mentions, are so critical to the economy, but also just symbolically. If you think about the health of a town, you think about the downtown area, the Main Street area. We did face a lot of challenges, and now we have a lot of great opportunities to revitalize and strengthen those places. In our case, proposals for things like improvements to commercial spaces in the downtowns, entertainment venues that are going to drive foot traffic and support all the businesses around them. The opportunity for affordable housing on the second floor, some of those spaces, for example, and then redeveloping facilities that can be home to childcare, affordable childcare, which is such an important issue both for children and for businesses, so that workers can find places to take their kids during the day. So a lot of great potential that we're excited to realize. And I would add, too, that we appreciate the design of the program in the sense that we will now serve as this intermediary to direct those grant funds, but the grant funds can only be up to 30% of any individual project. So now we've got to go to work with those partners, identifying private dollars, outside dollars, so that we can leverage and make maximal use of those precious taxpayer dollars that we've been entrusted with. So thanks.
Well, thank you, Matt. And you put together a phenomenal application. I think when you look at from the central corridor that Tawana and her team will be focused on between Minneapolis and St. Paul to central Minnesota, these are funds that can be applied really anywhere in the state. So excited to see the movement with the Initiative Foundation. And as you mentioned a moment ago, we'll turn now to our last guest speaker today, Tim Penny, who's president of the Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation in Owatonna. He's joining us by phone. Tim and his organization are receiving a $2.34 million grant. Tim, thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you, Commissioner. And I want to echo both Tawana and Matt in thanking DEED for the partnership around this program, but also the partnerships that we've had around other activities that matter to the vitality and future of rural Minnesota. In particular, over the last couple of years, where we've worked, all of us Initiative Foundation leaders have worked very closely with you to bring the small business recovery grants, the COVID-related grants to businesses in our respective regions. It's been critically important to help them offset some of the losses they experienced during these COVID months. With that, also thanks to the legislature and the governor for putting this together with the advice and counsel of you and your department. We in our region have several organizations that have received grants as well, and you've cited those earlier. Mankato, Faribault, Rochester, Winona are all going to use those grants for kind of Main Street downtown development and redevelopment projects, critically important because the retail sector and the hospitality sector was hit so hard by the COVID restrictions and shutdowns. On behalf of 2 other communities in the region, we made an application to help them secure dollars for projects that are important to their future. One is in Northfield, where obviously the downtown area was hit as hard as any downtown area with retail stores being affected by the COVID restrictions. But then a tragic fire took out the historic Archer House, the hotel that was iconic and really an anchor to the downtown business district. And so the project there will definitely pursue partners to fund the redevelopment of that property with the idea that there will also be eligibility for other retail activities in the downtown area to help bring back the vitality of downtown Northfield. The other project is one that really grew out of needs in the greater Blooming Prairie area for childcare. They lost some childcare providers during the COVID months. They also learned that in their community, before and after school care was just critically needed, especially with so much of the school year last year being done remotely. And so there is a facility in town that they're beginning to repurpose to make it both a child care facility as well as a before and after school facility, as well as a recreational facility that will be available to the entire town. And so the bulk of our support in Blooming Prairie will be assigned to help with the renovation and the repurposing of that facility for those educational needs. But additional dollars will be made available for other retail opportunities in that town. And our foundation has really built a strong network in both of those communities with local partners. And we also have increasingly allocated our own loan dollars and grant dollars to organizations that are serving the new immigrant minority communities in our region. And so we'll be giving priority to any requests or applications that come from the greater Northfield and greater Blooming Prairie area to folks that are new immigrants or minority entrepreneurs.
Well, thank you for that, Tim. And I think as you can tell from hearing these three leaders speak, these are some really important projects. And to put a finer point on just how this works, of course, the department will make these grants to these 14 organizations. They will then serve as really the drivers of the development using those levers I mentioned a moment before, whether it's loan guarantees, direct grants themselves, with the business and civic community and the regions they're focused on to build projects. And to the point that Tim made a moment ago, and I think Matt may mention this as well, matching grants are a big part of this. We want everyone to have skin in the game and work together and collaborate on making sure that that when we all work together, we can develop and grow faster. Before I pause and see if there's questions from our friends from the press, I just want to speak to the fact that, really at the center of this program and the center of our efforts to make it happen is this issue of racial equity in Minnesota and the challenges that we face at this inflection point in our state. And, it's not every day we hold press conferences on grant awards. DEED gives out a lot of money. We don't always do press conferences, but this is a lot of money. And we think it speaks to the moment we stand in right now, where if we don't invest in systematically different ways than we have in the past, we're not going to see the kind of change that we need. And, before the events that have happened since March 15th took place, we were already in a situation in which 3 out of 4 white folks in Minnesota owned their own home and only 1 out of 4 black folks did, where the poverty rate amongst the black community and Native community was over 30% of people below the poverty line compared to about 7 or 8% of white Minnesotans. Then the pandemic hits, and you have almost 70% of black Minnesotans applying for unemployment insurance at our department, and about 30% of white Minnesotans doing. Both stunning numbers, but over double folks in black community are applying for unemployment insurance than whites. And the recovery thus far has shown that while some strides have been made, in many cases, you've got people of color in Minnesota who are coming off of unemployment insurance and back into the market over the past 6 months, having a harder time finding jobs in this new market than their white counterparts. And the kind of things needed to take to change that are a lot of things. There's not one answer to that, but one of them is the idea of ownership and people owning their buildings, their businesses, their development. This program helps make that happen by putting the funding in the hands of entrepreneurs and leaders in communities of color across Minnesota, not just in the Twin Cities, to ensure we have different and better outcomes than we've had in the past. So we love this program. We think it's incredibly important. I'll mention that we are up here at the Capitol as we speak, advocating for more money for the program. We felt very strongly that $80 million was a phenomenal start. Boy, there's a lot more you could do. And so we are advocating as part of the governor's budget for another $20 million for this program. Again, a bipartisan program, statewide. I want to thank Chairs Pratt and Chair Noor for collaborating with us on building the structures of this. But it's a model that we know works, and we want to put more money into it to grow this program into the future. So again, thanks to Tawana and Matt and Tim for their leadership, because they are the true heroes of this program. We're going to see it moving forward from here, as well as the 11 other organizations who won grants. And I think with that, I'll pause and turn to our friends from the media who are here to see if there's any questions. And you can either use your little hand raising feature or feel free to just shout out as well. I see CCO, raise your hand. CCO Radio, are you there? You might be on mute.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can you hear me now?
There we go. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So my question is for Matt, Tim, and Tawana. I'd like to know what your reaction was when you first heard that you were receiving the grants. And then Tawana, if you could specify what you think you'll use this money for. I know I heard Tim and Matt were very specific, so I was just wondering if you could add more.
Tawana, do you
I'll
want to
jump
start
in
that off?
first.
Oh, go ahead, Tim.
Oh, that's fine. Well, I was just going to say I was elated because in our region we have a number of applicants, and we knew that they were going to make a very strong presentation for their projects, and those were cited by the commissioner a while ago: Winona, Mankato, Faribault, and Rochester through the Destination Medical Center. But our role, as we saw it, was to act on behalf of those communities that maybe didn't have the wherewithal, the staffing support at the city or whatever, to make an application on their own. And so on behalf of Northfield and Blooming Prairie, we offered to be the fiscal agent for this project. And because of our history of grant making and lending and the rest, we have the administrative capacity to manage this program in partnership with those communities. But I was ecstatic because these two communities maybe wouldn't have applied on their own, or might have had difficulty sort of documenting their ability to manage the program, but we could do that on their behalf, and very excited about that.
And Tawana, happy to defer to you.
Sure. Well, first, in terms of the reaction, really excitement. The Center for Economic Inclusion, along with our partners, announced a fund that we are adding this work to earlier this year with investments from the private sector that are allowing us not only to be able to support business owners who are growing and scaling their businesses, and specifically earlier this year, we announced a focus on Black and Latino women. This investment allows us to really focus on businesses that are within a half-a-mile radius of the Central Corridor, and really ensuring that those businesses have an opportunity to not only repair harm that's been done, but really looking at how we address wealth extraction that's occurred within our communities over generations, and really give businesses an opportunity to think about the enormous growth sectors that occur within the Twin Cities, and how to position themselves to do business with other businesses by owning their properties, by growing and scaling into other sectors, and by having that opportunity to dream a bit before they continue growing and scaling and prepare for the next generation of wealth building. And so we'll be deploying investments in three core areas of our fund. We've been doing this for the last couple of years. This investment, coupled with some others from the private sector, give us an opportunity to really fuel those engines, and couple that with some of the technical assistance from our partners in both that property space, but also in understanding greater how to take advantage of a lot of the supplier diversity growth that's occurred in our marketplace over the last 2 years, both from the government sectors, our cities and counties and state government, as well as the many large corporations who want to do business with Black and Brown-owned businesses in our community, but always haven't been positioned to do so, or even known which of those businesses are ready to do business with them. And so we'll couple our services and that of our partners with these investments from Main Streets to really fuel that work here in the Center for Economic Inclusion.
And I could just chime in briefly. I associate myself with all that my colleagues have said, and we too were elated, and even more so than usual, because this was a case where by the program design, you really have to show that you have community partners lined up to work with you. I mean, the commissioner gave us some nice credit, all of us intermediaries, but in fact, we're really just kind of the handmaidens here for the great work of entrepreneurs and city officials who have helped to designate their corridors and so forth. So when we applied the first time and we were unsuccessful, truthfully, we had high hopes, and it was disappointing to have to tell those partners that we didn't come through in the first instance, and now we have. So next is to go to work and establish processes for allocating these funds in an effective way, and establishing inclusive processes too that invite in folks that may not have always had their voices heard, so that we can, again, make maximal use of the dollars.
Well said, all three of you. Kavita, let's go to you next.
Yeah, hi. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the time frame in which you expect some of these funds to be being distributed to businesses for both this round and I guess the first round. Is all of it expected to be distributed this year, or could it take a couple of years? So kind of a sense of how fast some of that money will be rolling out to businesses. And I guess the second part of my second unrelated question is, where are we at that extra 20 million that you are requesting to add to this program? Was that potentially in this budget deal, or is that still a possibility for this session?
Yeah, thanks, Kavita. I'll take both of those, and I'll ask my colleague Kevin McKinnon to respond if I miss any of the details. But I believe it's about 15 months that you have once you've received the grant to get the money into the market. So some of those programs from round one are already in the market or are just getting into the market. It does take a little bit of time to formulate a program that makes sense for your region, and so we want to build in that window of time to let these leaders craft the program that makes the most sense for them. But it's fun to already see some of the projects from round one, which came out last year, already underway as the funding is moving. And if there's anything left over, that doesn't get spent by any of these partners, we certainly hope there isn't. But if there is, we just do another round in the future. As to the fate of the current negotiations over the jobs bill, and in particular this program, we are in those conversations actively right now. As you know, many committees got targets, but many did not. So we're waiting to get some further budget framework details from the leaders. But this is something that is the top of the radar, both for the House and for the governor. And I believe the Senate is warm to the program as well, given how deeply involved they were in crafting it. So we're optimistic. We got some work to do, but we certainly want to raise the volume on just how important this is. It's a program we took a long time to build, and with short time left here before the end of the session, it's the kind of place where money will be very well spent if we can take advantage of the structure we've already designed. Great. Well, I don't see any other hands up unless either Creator or WCCO have an additional question, or others. Great. Well, I know we're almost at time. If you do have any questions, please do follow up with us directly. Tawana, Matt, and Tim, thanks for joining us. And thanks most of all just for the great work that you're doing. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you.
Thanks again. See ya.